Welcome to Authentic Living with Roxanne, a place where we have conscious conversations about things that really matter in our lives. And now here's your host, Roxanne Derhodge.
Hi everyone, it's Roxanne Derhodge. Thanks for tuning in again today. Today I have a special colleague, Penny Tremblay, who is a expert in dealing with conflict. And what she's going to do today is to talk about her concept called playing nice in the sandbox, where she basically deals with leaders in their teams across North America on how to deal with conflict. Hey, Penny, how are you?
Hey, Roxanne, I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. Don't you love going live with all the back and forth? Penny just got kicked off again. So thanks so much, Penny, for being on today. So now Penny has had a quite an interesting path, and her brand is playing nice in the sandbox, and it's such a playful way of thinking of conflict because quite literally, Penny, and I'd be interested to hear about how you created the brand. About all of us, really, I think, could do with skills of getting better at how to relate with others when things aren't going so well for us. But, just tell us kind of a bit about you and a bit about this path that you've been on working with conflict in the workplace.
Sure. Well, my brand came from an elevator pitch. So I was teaching people how to do elevator pitches because sometimes people pull on my business expertise. And so I was trying out different ones. So when I said, I'm in the business of leadership training and conflict resolution, people would go like, yeah, boring. And then one day I came out with, hey, I teach people how to play nice in the sandbox. And people would lean in and laugh and giggle. And so I got such great feedback on that elevator pitch that it became the way that I introduced myself. And everybody got it immediately. And so I built a whole brand around it. So yeah, some people refer to me as the sandbox lady. And so, one of the things that you asked me to talk about was conflict resolution. And I guess, the playful approach to conflict resolution is really catchy for people because nobody ever wants to get invited to a conflict resolution meeting or a conflict resolution training. In fact, I even tried to have conferences with conflict resolution as the title, and nobody wanted to come.
Mm-hmm.
The whole word itself sounds like combat, like, it's a fight. But the reality is that conflict is inevitable. There's always going to be conflict that surfaces, and most people aren't taught how to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So we get entangled with conflict at work. We get entangled with conflict at home in our personal lives. And one thing that really resonated with me was watching an interview of a couple married 75 years. And they asked the woman, how did you, what's your secret to be married for 75 years? And she said, back in our time when something was broken, you didn't throw it in the garbage. You fixed it. Mm-hmm. And it was like, that has never left me. We live in such a disposable society today. If we pull some nails out of boards, we throw them in the garbage. Back in the old days, they used to straighten those nails out because you might need them one day. And it's the same thing with thorns in our side when it comes to people. We so easily can just hit delete, block, break up with somebody by text message, hide behind our email and be firing insult talk to some of our colleagues at work. And the more technologically, the more technologically connected we are with our technology, the more disconnected we're becoming as a human. So those are some of the things that come to mind, when I think about helping people understand the value of talking about things face to face or Zoom to Zoom, or at least phone calls, just get conversation going when there's conflict.
So you said something quite interesting. I'm going to talk about, when we have differences with someone and we haven't resolved it, we kind of have this thing in our head, right? Oh, Penny, speaks too loud, or Penny cuts me off, or, oh yeah, well, Penny always has to have the last say. So we have these messages that we give ourselves, right? We call those like, labeling, distortions, whatever. Let's talk a little bit about, when you go in to work with, say, a team, because I know Penny was just with me not too long ago and she was working with a team. How do you start? Like, where do you start with it? What's your process? Because I know you have a process and I can show you. I actually have this. I thought Penny would find that very interesting. This is Penny's lovely brochure that talks about her process. And you can see it's quite playful. I love the sandbox with the scoop in it.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how you kind of approach a concept, because I'm thinking, if I have my thing in my head around someone, I'm going to have a preconceived notion about how Penny's going to be or how Jim's going to be or whatever. What's your process when you're kind of called in to work with a company or a team that's not getting along?
Well, I would start with step one of my sandbox system, which is conflict resolution. And, that just makes common sense when you're saying, what do you do when a company calls you for conflict? But a company doesn't always call me for conflict. Sometimes a company will call me for team building or leadership training, which is great. That's step two for me. But if there's conflict, we need to resolve that first, because you can't build a castle on quicksand. And where there is resentment, there can be no relationship. So what I do when somebody calls me in to work with a team on conflict is I meet everybody involved one-on-one first.
Okay.
So let's say the team is 8 people, or 48 people, whatever. Maybe it's only 2 people they want me to work with. I meet them one-on-one first, and I have a confidential conversation with them because I want to understand the problem from their perspective. It also helps me gather themes, but what I encourage people to do in that one-on-one conversation, after I think I understand the situation, is I always encourage conflict resolution from the inside out. And what I mean by that is that we're all responsible to create the life that we want to live and to create the relationships that we want, the quality of relationships that we want to have. Most people, when they're in conflict, they're blaming someone else. They're blaming circumstances on their boss, their colleague, the system, they're underpaid, whatever. And so what I think is the most important step, because I learned it from Stephen Covey, habit number 1 in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is be proactive, take responsibility to create the life that you want to create and stop blaming people, because when you blame, you're giving your power away. So you become powerless, less power. When you take responsibility, you recognize what's yours in the conflict. And that's really the only thing you can fix. You and I, we can't fix somebody else, right? You and I can fix you, but you and I, we can't fix him and him and him and her. So that is, I think, the biggest shift that people have to make is, if they want to be better, if they want to have more peaceful relationships, they need to go inside first and find out what about the relationship isn't peaceful and why not. And that why not has to be from an I perspective. When he says that, I get triggered rather than he makes me feel stupid, right? Or she is condescending when she talks to me. Rather than that, it's like I feel belittled when she speaks to me. It's taking responsibility, and then if people really want to get into the work, they can work more in more depth with me and start digging. And as a therapist, once people start digging, they find those past experiences that have created those stories in their mind, which create
Mm-hmm.
those labels that you were speaking of earlier. And that's really where the entanglements started.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like reprogramming, rewiring, changing your story about things.
Right, because as soon as you go to, if Penny, if only you would, then you get the okay, I could have stopped now. But if it's Penny, when you are abrupt when you enter the office, it puts me off, and I'm kind, I can't think clearly.
Mhm.
You enter the office a little bit, slower or quieter, and then you probably go, oh my god, I didn't even realize I did that. And then you
Yeah,
go, oh, okay. And then you're using the responsibility on you to your point, right? Because I think we hear the word triggers being thrown around a lot, but a lot of people really don't know what it is, right?
right.
Something happens, you tell yourself a story about the event, you make meaning and purpose to the what is happening, and
Right.
then there's a behavior, right? But if we don't have anybody to really talk it through, to your point, like to go to, well, how is it affecting me? It's my internal world. It may be right or wrong, but it's my internal world about how I interpret things. And then, then I respond to the person that's pissing me off in some way, kind of thing.
Right.
And it
Yeah,
becomes a vicious kind of snowball, right?
that's right. That's exactly right. And one of the really common problems that people have in the workplace with each other is that they said good morning to somebody and that person doesn't respond. That is
Mhm.
so common. And I think to myself, okay, well, that's, you've said good morning to somebody. Why do you need that response? Oftentimes, I mean, it would be nice, but if you don't get it, does that make the person wrong? But we make up stories about it, like, oh, they don't like me, or oh, they're rude, or oh, it's because of something that I did 2 years ago, or they're just unfriendly, or they're snotty, or whatever. We make up assumptions that potentially aren't even true.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
deeper question I would have for somebody is, why do you need it? Why do you need someone to respond? Sometimes I'll ask people who are so frustrated with a colleague at work, I'll say, um, how do you behave? How do you get, well, you said triggered, but how does this person's behavior affect you? Well, I don't want to be in the same room as them. I feel, I want to quit, whatever. I often say, what's your favorite flower?
Hmm.
So
Okay.
what's your favorite flower?
Um, I think a hibiscus.
Okay. So let's imagine that there was a vase of hibiscus on the boardroom table.
Hmm. Hmm.
Those flowers are going to be their beautiful selves, their color, their smell, their radiance, no matter who sits at the table.
Hmm.
So if we could just try to be more like our authentic selves,
Hmm.
despite what other people are doing and saying, we would be able to let a lot of minor things roll off our back, right?
Hmm. Yeah, just to look at it for what it is, and all of us are so unique. And you know, with conflict, it's you're right. And we get more stronger in our position because we think we're right, and it's kind of that tug of war, right? Everybody's kind of pulling at each other, and nobody kind of steps into it. Most people go against it, and then that rope gets tighter and tighter.
Right.
So I want to talk a lot, about differences and diversity, because you know what, Penny, I know, being out there in the kind of work that you do, differences is one thing, but
Mhm.
diversity is a whole other, I would say, kettle of fish, probably a bigger kettle of fish that are based on what we're already dealing with differences.
Yeah.
So tell me kind of, how do you find that when you're working with people, is it around diversity that's the issue, or different ways of thinking, or culture, or what? How do you kind of, well, how do you deal with diversity if there's conflicts on teams?
In the workplace, there's a tremendous amount of diversity because we have different cultures, we have different gender. Well, we have different genders, of course, but we have gender fluidity. So, somebody that used to be one gender could be transitioned into another. We have diversity in people's values. We have diversity in generations. We've got the baby boomers and the millennials, and so there's diversity in spiritual, values. There's all kinds of diversity, and I I know one thing for sure is that no matter where you fall into any of those spaces, we all want the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to have a peaceful and content life. We all want to make the most amount of money in the least amount of time. And we want to be feeling like we're included and in on things. So I think it's wonderful that there's so much diversity in the world, in
Mm-hmm.
the workplace, because we get to learn from each other. But I think the problem that we have is that we don't accept other people's differences. So
Mm-hmm.
even like, well, one of the diversities I didn't mention is personality styles,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Often causes conflict because somebody is like very direct, short and to the point, and somebody else is like the touchy feely, likes to have the compliments, the before and after, and you know either one isn't right or wrong. And this is one of my own personal conflict resolution tips and strategies that I've almost mastered is losing judgment. Like I've stopped judging things as right or wrong,
Mm-hmm.
black or white. Um, and of course, that's very easy to do in conflict resolution work because I don't have any emotional investment in it. When I'm emotionally invested in something, I'm not as good as I am when I'm a mediator. But yeah, it's about not expecting people to be just like us. It's
Mm-hmm.
allowing people to be who they are, allowing them to be human, and allowing them to be different, and not expecting that we have to be the same, because if we were all the same, the world would be a much less exciting place. But
Mm-hmm.
it causes a lot of conflict when we think, well, why are they doing that like that? We wouldn't do it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, does that make them wrong? Does that make us wrong? No, it's just different, right?
So what I hear then is really, I mean, to put it bluntly, we all have different perspectives. Your reality to my reality. Yes, we're female. Yes, we do the, similar kind of work. But your background, growing up in Canada, and I think rural, me in Trinidad, kind of extended family,
Right.
different culture, all those different things. There's going to be lots of different things, right? But again, it's about commonality, right? It's about what is the common goal. And oftentimes when teams get together, they have potentially a common outcome, but the way to get to it is often where the conflict might develop, or maybe different personalities, like the introvert versus the extrovert, or the microscopic person versus the big picture person, or those, maybe one cultural person doesn't speak as much, the other person you can't keep quiet. So there's lots of moving parts in the team. I would say it's like a family in a way, because it's a system, and a family is a system, like a company is a system, like a team is a system. And we have to figure out, kind of, what are the rules, what are the roles, who negates who helps out, how we're going to clean up, like quite literally, how we're going to clean up the sandbox before we
Yeah,
get playing in it.
right.
And I think you're right when you say you can't build, a new foundation,
Right.
on moving sand.
And
You
build
have to
a
create,
castle on
yeah,
quicksand. You have to.
build a castle in quicksand. You have to get firm ground. But that means that you have to level off that playing field in order to start building again. And I oftentimes, I don't know, you tell me, sometimes teams have never spoken at this level. right? Where they had to look at things at a deeper level to say, well, why is it that, when so and so takes the lead because nobody else takes the lead, it's good sometimes, but sometimes I don't want them to take the lead. So it's to really kind of hash that out and talk about the intention behind behavior, which most people oftentimes don't sit down and talk about. But when there's conflict, then everybody kind of goes in their corner in their camps, and there's alignments with one person. Not and Penny and I are a lot alike, so maybe we might talk about things a little bit more. And I often say it's about leveling it off so that everybody can start having the same conversation at the same time. Now with leaders, right? If it's a leader that people are having issues with, how do you approach that with the work that you do?
That's such a great question. I include the entire team. But it's a common question when a leader will say, should I be there? Well, yeah. Do you want us, do you want us sorting things out without you? Like, no.
Everybody will teach your team some things, but you won't know what we taught them, and then you're going to have to go back and lead them. Yeah.
And that's the power of the group conversation is that when I facilitate that, everybody has equal opportunity to speak and listen to each other. And I actually learned the circle approach from Indigenous people. And in fact, mediation actually comes from Indigenous tribal leaders bringing their people together to sit in circle to resolve social conflict. So thousands of years ago, this was already happening. In my mediation work over the decades, I was privileged to be working with many Indigenous communities, and the circle is, it's no stranger to Indigenous people. It's very equal. There's no beginning and there's no end, and there's no hierarchy, and everybody has an equal say, but also oftentimes an object would get passed around so that people know whose turn it is. I personally don't do that. I put a spiritual object in the center of the circle, just sometimes for something to look at more so. But, depending on the group, depending on the area, sometimes it's some cultural symbol or some medicines like sage or cedar or something. And so the purpose of the circle is really to give everybody an equal opportunity to share. And the leader, I often ask to lead us off, because from there we can move from person to person. But it's interesting what happens when you create that even playing field for people to dig. And I often ask the leader beforehand to, I say, I'm going to ask you to lead us off, but also I want to ask you what you've contributed to the team conflict. And the leader will go like, me?
And you want me to go first too, right?
And you want me to go first? And the value in that is, well, I have a prop right here because I was actually doing a mediation all morning, which is why I had to ask you to change the time. But anyways, this is a prop that it was made for me by a former boyfriend, and it's the best thing that came out of our relationship. I'm very honored to have this very custom-made ball of knotted rope. I told him I need a prop, bunch of knotted rope. So he made this for me. Anyway, very unique, one of a kind. People are always very intrigued by it. But what this symbolizes is, entanglement of everybody's stuff. So if everybody in the workplace or in the department, has all this stuff entangled, this symbolizes it. And I say to people, if everybody could just reach in and take their piece and say, you know what, this is mine and I own it, and I'm sorry and I'm going to do better. If everybody could do that, there'd be nothing left, right? And so when I ask the leader to, own their pieces, it's interesting. They don't always, they're not always shocked. But in this recent one that I'm thinking about, the upper managers, like, I was really shocked when she asked me that question. But that's why I meet with everybody one-on-one first, because I want to coach them along a little bit with conflict resolution, because the reality is, like you said, people aren't trained for this. They go through their technical training, they come out whatever, doctor, lawyer, technician of some type, healthcare worker, teacher, anything. I mean, conflict is not, it's in all sectors. It is not prejudiced. It will affect any team anywhere. And so the reality is that we're not taught how to deal with it. Years ago, people used to get a lot of social and value-based education from church and from strong family units. And those aren't as strong as they used to be. So where are people learning how to resolve conflict?
Well, I'm not really sure, because like,
From,
yeah,
Instagram memes, like, no, you learn how to work through things by going through the discomfort of working through things. I always say there's only one way through conflict, and that's through it. You can't go over it or around it or under it. You have to go through it, and it's uncomfortable, but you come out the other side of that and you're feeling a great amount of peace, and you're feeling more expanded. You're feeling like you understand yourself and the other person or people or corporate objectives or something better. And so I often say there's no such thing as a failed relationship as long as you're learning the lessons.
Absolutely. Maybe uncomfortable, but you're always progressing along. And I mean, any
Right.
relationship that's healthy has conflict, because when I would coach people and they would say, we don't have any conflict. And I say, okay, well, I'm going to give you the first hour on me, because I want you to get it all out. Because if you don't consistently talk about differences, and I think a lot of times people think they equate conflict with something extreme. They don't recognize that every time, if you discuss little things, it doesn't have to become a cumulative, big
Right.
cloud,
Right.
because now you've realized, hey, this is bothering me. Can we, next time we have our little chit chats, that can we chat about this? Then it doesn't create that big snowball. But like you said, where would people, they would have either learned it potentially, growing up, or in relationships. We learn how to be in relationships and to deal with differences. But where else, do people go out and buy books? Do they, maybe they listen to podcasts like these now,
Right.
But again, until it shows up somewhere, and there's obviously it's adverse, then you call in somebody like yourself that's the expert to really help them through. So
Yeah.
you kind of like you said, you interview everybody, you have a sense, you coach them, then you do the circle, and then what's the next process after that?
Well, in the circle, that's basically the facilitated group discussion, whether it's 2 or 50 people, and then we make commitments, and they make commitments. I write them up, and then I meet them for a follow-up session.
So the commitments is based on the overall goal of what the group. So I'm going to assume, is there a collective goal of the entire group, and then individually everybody talks about how they contribute to the problem, and then you talk about the commitment about how they might alter, their behavior to enhance getting along. Then and then
Yeah.
you write it up, and then you meet individually with each person after, or you meet with the team after.
Meet as a
As a
group.
group. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. What if there's somebody that's kind of saying they're going to go along? You maybe get one or two of those, maybe periodically, and they say all the right things and they give you the commitments. Yeah, Penny, but they don't go along. How do you deal with those people?
Well, that comes up in the follow-up session, right?
Okay.
How's it going? Everybody's responsible. Everybody is accountable. And, as a mediator, the first thing that I need to ensure as a mediator is that everybody involved is committed to something new. If 2 people aren't committed to change, then I can't help them. So I will stop the process and, gladly hand them their money back and say, oh, okay, then keep your problem and good luck with that. I mean, that's never happened, but it has happened that I've had to put that on the table. Like if people aren't really committed or working towards something, I say like, you know what? If you guys just want to call this process off right now, I'll cut you check for your money back and we can all just keep on keeping on, because where there's no change, there's no change. I can't do your push-ups for you. But I'm really in the mediation process, the actual facilitated conversation. I'm just a facilitator of the conversation. I'm gifted enough to know what to say and skillful enough to know how to say it so that people feel engaged and open and safe. And I can't say that I've never made any mistakes. But what I would recommend to the average viewer who's watching this is that in workplace conflict, the onus is on the employees to get along. So if Penny and Roxanne have a problem with each other, it's up to Penny and Roxanne to work it out. If Penny and Roxanne attempt and can't, then they can go to their supervisor. Problem is, a lot of managers and supervisors don't know how to manage conflict.
Right.
So, all the way up the line, the problem is that people are afraid of it. They don't know how to manage it, and they don't know how to reach out for help and who to reach out for help to. Workplace investigations are legislated if there's a formal complaint filed in a workplace. And workplace investigations are very expensive. Some companies have the opportunity to do them internally, and others need to hire investigation companies, which are very costly. And I don't do investigations. I think that if people would contact me first, there might not need to be an investigation. If people have had an investigation, they really should contact somebody like me after to put the relationships back together again, because it's like after an investigation, it's such an intrusive process, but it's shh.
Yeah.
Hush, don't talk about it. And so people are like, walking on eggshells. It's like Humpty Dumpty's fallen off the wall and nobody's bothered to put them back together again. And the rest of the days are spent walking on eggshells.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so important, right? Like you're right. It's kind of like now you've had this issue and who said what to who and who was, all that stuff. And then you have all these fragmented people now walking around with their version of the story and who, how it got resolved. So very, very important that people really realize they need, regardless of the stage of the process, they need to, whether the team stays after the fact or some people leave or what, even if people leave, you still have to reintegrate everybody and get back to a functional team again.
Yeah. Yes. Even when the investigation is finished, it's extremely confidential. So people think that HR should hold a, town hall and say, hey, everybody, this is what happened. But no, nobody's going to find out what happened, except if there are disciplinary actions or recommendations, the appropriate people will be notified, period, end of story. So I don't think I know enough about the process to be criticizing it, except from my perspective that they are extremely expensive. They can stall an organization for 6 months and still not get the results that this process can get. I worked on a case today, and I was just scarfing down some food and reading some email before I got on with you, and somebody from that emailed me and said, thank you so much. We made more movement in 2 days than we have in 10 years.
Amazing.
And
so
there's only
go ahead, Penny. Sorry.
Conflict for 10 years, and that's one more day.
Yeah. 2 days of really focusing on it. So I know we talked a little bit about superpower. So let's talk a little bit about if I decide that I want to get better at conflict, Penny, what would you say would be one or two maybe superpowers that I should be focusing on so I can take those skills with me wherever I go to help me with conflict?
Okay. So I think that, one of the most important things to know is, in my definition of conflict, is that conflict is the absence of peace. So you mentioned it earlier when you said some couples don't think that they have conflict, but they do. They just work through it regularly, so nothing ever mounts up to being something significant. I think that when we talk about conflict in general, there's many types. Like there's inner conflict, right?
Mhm.
And then there's external conflict. So the more that we can work on ourselves, the less we have to get entangled with other people. Okay.
Mhm.
Let's say we're talking about we're in conflict at work with somebody else. What's the superpower? Is, in my opinion, is confrontation. And the word sounds intimidating. Have a conversation, confront it, challenge it. Don't sweep it under the carpet. It's only going to fester there. So
Mhm.
the most important thing, in my opinion, is that you are moving through it. You know it's there. It's a knot in your gut, or some people feel it as like they want to throw up, or it's a weight on their shoulders, or it's pain in their chest, or whatever. Know your feedback from when you are in conflict, and commit to doing something about it quickly. So
Mhm.
there's that 24-hour rule that a lot of hockey parents are learning about. When you're all fired up, you've got to wait 24 hours, and I really agree with the idea that if our emotions are flared up, we're not going to be peaceful. And we want to try and have a productive conversation. So
Mhm.
give yourself time. Give yourself a timeout. Even if somebody says, "I want to talk to you right now," and you're like, you could say, "I need some time." And whatever you're going to commit to, make sure you stay committed. So if you're going to say, "I'll meet you tomorrow morning," or "I'll meet you at the end of the day," stay committed to that.
Mhm.
I would highly recommend, if possible, if your emotions will allow you to uh, deal with it before the end of the day, because then you can have a peaceful night's sleep. And we know how valuable that is. Um, so confront it. Ways that you can confront it is, you can you can be aware of what in your perspective has happened or is happening, and how it's affecting you, and take personal responsibility for it. So when you're talking about it, you're not like, you this and you that. It's more like, I feel sad when, or it hurts me because, or I feel insecure in my job, or whatever. It's I. But even before that, you have to get people to the conversation. You have to get them to the table. And one of the things that I have, if you'd like, I'll give it to all of your listeners. Just a one pager of conversation starters, but they all carry through one theme. They're invitations.
Mhm.
The easiest one is, "Can we talk?"
Mhm.
That's an
Yeah.
invitation, right?
Yeah,
Or
and it's not invasive. It's kind of,
it's not in
hey, can we talk? Because you're feeling it in your tummy, to your
right,
point, and
right.
you're saying, hey, can we have a bit of a chat? Says
Yes,
to the person that they probably know something's going on, but you're doing it in a nice way.
right. Sounds better than come into my office,
Oh yeah.
or "Can I see you in my office?" Or I used to say this, and probably why I'm not married to this person anymore, because I used to say, this was my line back then. "We need to talk." I
Yeah,
thought that was a good line. I mean, it's short. I thought it was an invitation, but it wasn't inviting enough.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, do you see the difference? Can we
Mhm.
talk?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
need to talk.
Oh yeah, for
It's not an
sure.
invitation. So I like people to run it through the birthday party filter. So let's say you're inviting people to a birthday party. What would you write on the envelope? What would you write on the inside? Like, would you write, "Come to my house"? You know, come to my house, we have something to discuss. No, you'd write, you're invited, or, so from that, of course, not those same words, but like from that, what's the word I'm looking for? Like from that intention. Or
To
from
set the
that,
intention of what you're trying to achieve, and if because you're inviting resolution, but you want to make it in an engaging enough way,
right,
versus already kind of working with the block that's up with the other person.
right,
If you say we got to talk,
right.
right, that's different from, hey, do you have some time? You have a couple minutes we can chat, which
Yeah.
really kind of takes the edge off.
And
Penny,
another
this,
easy one is, I'd really like to get your opinion on something.
oh, I like that one.
Okay. And
Yeah.
the opinion could be, what makes you think that what you did was right? And, do you know how much it hurt me? But at least it's an opener, right?
Right,
And
right.
I think that there's so many times I hear that people want to have conversations with others, but they don't want to show up to the conversation. You can't have a conversation with somebody if they're not sitting across the table, right? Or across
Absolutely.
the circle.
Absolutely. No texting, no,
Yeah,
just do it as much as you can in whatever format,
right.
face to face, like we're doing now, which is even not ideal. But if this is what you have, just
Yeah.
really saying, I need to see your eyes. I need to, know that you see me so that we can resolve things.
Yeah.
Now, Penny, I know you and I can go on for a very long time because we have these awesome conversations all the time. We're lucky enough to be,
Have each other.
connected.
Yeah.
So for people that are interested in Play Nice in the Sandbox, you said you would give us the openers, which I would lovely if you can get that to us. We will make sure that's in the show notes.
Yeah.
Where can people get a hold of you if they're leaders that are listening, or people on teams even that are thinking, I think we might need some help or whatever. Where could they get a hold of you?
Well, my name here says pennytremblay.com because that's my website address. There's lots of valuable resources on my website. There's a category called leadership tips, and I've written almost 400 of them, so they're searchable. I have 3 programs. They're 16 hours each, so they're all 2-day programs. Let me get them in focus here. They're falling apart. So my programs are Play Nice, Winning in the New Workplace Sandbox. This is great for the entire team. I've done this virtually to 350, to one team of 350 people once, and it was amazing. So that can be, all my work can be done in person or virtually. I've got this follow-up to that one I just showed you. It's called Relationships and Conflict Management for Managers and Supervisors. This is really valuable, and sometimes it's a great place for an organization to start if they want to train their leaders on how to avoid the biggest mistakes. And then I have one on mental health and wellness, and this one is very special. It's rooted in the 7 grandfather teachings because I work with Indigenous people on this one. But the 7 grandfather teachings are amazing for learning principles to live by that are nature based. So, like the wolf and the beaver and the bear and so on. So, anytime I bring out spiritual things for audiences, I get thanked because people say, I didn't realize how much the spiritual aspect of my life was missing. So, I don't pitch any one denomination, but, I think that when people acknowledge a power greater than themselves, they can get through some of these difficult conversations, this is right on my website. It's called The 5 Biggest Mistakes Leaders Make When Conflict Surfaces and How to Avoid Them. This is right on the main page of pennytremblay.com. I highly recommend you download this. It's a quick read. You can read it over a cup of coffee. 5 biggest mistakes if you're a leader. Avoidance being number 1. And so those are some ways that people can get a hold of me. I have recently developed a Play Nice formula, which you can download, and you can work through a conflict on your own. Like the 8 steps in my Play Nice formula. So I have lots and lots of resources. I love helping people. I work with a business card. It's called their Peace Pass. And I say, call me anytime you're struggling. I don't like people struggling for long. And sometimes we just need, a third party to vent to and to help us sort our stuff out, as you know, because Roxanne, you and I use each other often for that, right? So
Sure.
the problem is that in the workplace, when you start going to other people with your problems, it can go from venting to gossip pretty quickly. So, consider reaching out to somebody like Roxanne or myself who can help you take the higher road, or at least get out of that cesspool of negativity and not be swimming along with people who are just as negative as you are about a certain situation. And also for leaders, I recommend getting involved in a group of other leaders regarding how to manage conflict. And I do have a master class for people. So I have lots and lots of resources. Thank you so much for asking about all of the things that I've been working on.
Well, for anyone listening, reach out and have that conversation with Penny. So what am I taking away? I think it's just reinforcing that concept of the languaging around I versus, you. And to just use the basic concept of, hey, can we have a bit of a chat? Those are some basic things, but really, really so necessary. So for everybody, I'm releasing my new book on May 12th. It's ROR, Return on Relationships. And I'll be doing a live podcast with 4 CEOs on that particular day. And I would love for everybody to attend. But in the interim, if you just want to assess your relationships and how authentic you are in those relationships, go to roxannederhodge.com/quiz. There'll be a quiz that you can walk through and we'll send you the results so you can kind of know where you kind of sit and areas that you're doing well in. Fantastic. But if there's some areas that you can do and need some help with, I'm available to do that. So again, Penny, thanks so much for coming in today. Penny had a busy day and was still able to fit us in. And again, for everyone, thank you for being here, and we'll chat with you again next week. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Authentic Living with Roxanne, creating the space for positive, healthy change. Roxanne is a keynote speaker, psychotherapist, and coach. To work with Roxanne, visit roxannederhodge.com/blueprint. We'll see you next time on Authentic Living with Roxanne.